Hi guys, I'm Carly from Carly's Creative Clay. Now I've been making this Sasquatch over the last couple of weeks, or Bigfoot. Now I made an arm in order for next week to make the arm on this side so that it didn't get in the way. And I baked it because all the legs were baked already. I baked it on its front like that, and the toes snapped because the clay can get soft when it gets close to its curing temperature, and I didn't think properly, and it's fallen forwards, and that wrist has hit the counter, and if you can see, that's broken there, and there is a crack running up the armpit there. So I'm going to need to do some repairs, and you get a lot more problems repairing once you've varnished, because you can't put well, at least the varnishes that I use, you can't put them through the oven. I know Fimo and Sculpey do their own varnishes, but I found they went sticky, so I use Ronsil floor varnish or Art Deco's gloss varnish. So, but this isn't a problem with this one. We can fix it because it's not been varnished yet. And I thought I would show you how I go about fixing these, because it's something that even the most advanced clayers have to come up against. And it's very easy to look at this level of damage and go, well, that's it, completely ruined, I'm going to have to bin it and start again. No, you're not. We will get through this. So let's go through. First off, I'm going to take that hand off, and I'm going to be careful and try and get a clean break like that. If I was to just bend it and snap it, you're more likely to get that end and rip a little diagonal out of it. So gentle wiggles backwards and forwards, or you can use your craft knife or X-Acto knife to cut away the remaining. So, but we got I could see we'll get a nice clean break off. So the tools of the job that I plan to use, and this is not saying that I'm not going to end up going into my toolbox for others I fix on the fly, but this is what I like to use. It is a needle tool, but I think this one was designed for leather making, one of their board tools. So it is slightly thicker than a normal clay needle tool, and it's a bit more heavy duty. You can really put a bit more welly in, and the reason why I'm using that is I'm going to put a hole through the center of the wrist and through the center of a hand, and put some florist wire in, and then pack raw clay around that, get the bond very good and make it look all right, and then bake it. So, but the florist wire just help that joint strengthen up. You got to be careful boring holes in baked clay. You don't want to slip and stab your hand, that's a trip to A&E, and you don't want to cause more cracks and breaks. So I look for the center and make sure I look at the direction that the arm's going, so that way, and I'm putting a bit of pressure but not a ton, and I'm twisting whilst I'm going in. See? I'm not going very far, I'm aiming for a couple of centimeters max. So a bit further. And it's not that difficult to do. Can you see I've already got a hole there? Yeah? Quick swip of drink. Now I'm going to get my florist wires and see if I can find one that is just slightly bigger than that hole. Now I've found if you use a little bit of florist wire, like one of your offcuts, let me grab one of mine and I'll show you the top. Whoops, dropped one. There we go. Right, found it. I've got a little pot that I keep the offcuts for, and I'll just take one, it's simpler. It's fine to use the little offcuts of wire, so little bits like that long, and you use them to shore up joints in raw clay because it pushes in without much resistance. Trying to push that in that little hole, you're then pushing on a sharp point and you've not got a lot of space to actually hold it. And what I've found is because you're holding across the tip and pushing in, that sharp edge gouges out your thumb and it hurts. So don't use your little bits. You're going to need to get a decent sized length of wire so that you've really got all that extra wire to help you push it in. Yeah? And like I did with the needle tool, you're doing little twists. It is a fiddly job. It helps if I don't block that hole back up with clay. That's what I've done. Come on, bore back out, because crumbly clay will block your hole you just dug out. Whoop, rolling. Let's put that down out the way. There we go. Right, so lining up in the hole and just pushing it in. Give it a bit of a wiggle. Like that. Is that in deep enough? You want it to be quite firmly in place. And the reason why I'm having as much difficulty as I am is because there's a wire armature that stops about there. That's why it snapped on the wrist. I should have kept it longer. It was about the same length as this arm, so it's probably butting against the other bit of wire, but that's in quite firmly. So now that's in, I'm going to cut it longer than I need, so then I can tell how. Actually, let's go about there. So what made me decide that length is we're going to go into the wrist a bit, into the hand, and have some clay to pack at the base of the wrist, which will be a few millimeters long. But actually that might be a bit long still. Let's see. How much? No, that's still in the wrist. So you really got to eyeball these things. And again, we're going to come along and bore a hole. And again, be very, very careful. You don't want to break anything. Even if you do break it, I show you how I'm sculpting the toes, so that you can do the same with, if you didn't want to attach what you've already baked, you can just literally add raw clay and re-sculpt, and I'll be showing you how to do that in a minute with those toes. So I'm just showing you the two different ways so you can see that that's the thing. Sorry about that.
Are you on the phone? Oh, sorry.
Right,
Sorry.
just going down into the wrist. I can feel where it is. There we go. Right, so let's just check the sizing out when that's in, and we're just gonna push it into that hole. I find little wiggles can help you not break. Come on, get in. It's being very, very tricksy, this one. Why are you doing that? I'll try and make a bigger hole. It is a lot of fiddle work. I often don't bother with this. I often just re-sculpt the broken off bit with raw clay. But I wanted to show you the two techniques. So just check that that hole's big enough. Yeah, that'll do. Right, let's put some raw clay around it and then we'll try and reattach the hand. So you want the same colour as what you've broken off, which I know can be difficult if you've not got any clay left over. And I'm just going to pack it around the base of the break. And I'm using a ball tool just to get it in there. And you want it all the way around that wire. Like that. Okay. Now, let's see if we can get this hand to behave itself and get on where I want it to. What I'm finding is that hole keeps getting distorted and not clearing out. There we are, that's better. Right. So, moment of truth. Let's see, can I get this wrist on? Where's the hole? Just there. Like that. You almost went. Come on, you. You know you want to do this. There we go. Like that. Now that is still wobbly. You're going to push it down as hard as you can. Make sure it's in place. Then we're going to come in with some more of that clay. We're going to roll out. Oh, I've got crumbs. Let's get some tissue. It's because it's baked and I've done fur on it. It always crumbles and puts off those little crumbs. Right. Come in with some clay. We're going to roll out a very thin bead or stick, and it's going to be long enough to go all the way around that wrist. So about there. I'm going to start at the top and we're going to push that across that joint like this all the way around, keeping it nice and taut like that. Break off the excess. Okay, now I'm going to come in with our ball tool. I like this metal side of it because you can just roll and push it in like this, and you're trying to feather that join line and make sure that you packed out all that joint and that the clay will be holding it nice and firm on either side, so on the wrist of the hand to the main arm, so it's just an extra support. Okay, now if you are doing smooth skin, I advise you come round and use your finger just to blend in. Can you see you can blend the raw clay in with the baked clay and it vanishes pretty well. Just going around. It's going to be awkward getting into the underside, but you've got to do it. Make sure you go around the whole break and smooth that clay in. Before I had ball tools, there's like a million different things around your house. Knitting needles, cocktail sticks, all that kind of stuff. That is a thin stick enough to help you with this job. Right, almost there. There we go. and that wrist is looking pretty good, I think, but I want to put some more spiky fur. It kind of stops a bit high for me, so what I'm going to do is come in with a fringe of brown clay again, like I did for it in the first place. Start somewhere where you can see. It's easier to make the join line somewhere visible. I'm just going to re-put in a new raw clay fringe around that arm. Whoop. Get in around that back. Like that. Now, push that all down into place. I need a little bit more on the inside of that wrist. Then I'll smooth it all in and scratch in the fur lines again, and it will look as good as new. And this time, don't bake it on the same angle. You already got warning that that don't work, so I think this time I'll lay it on its back. So we've got the fringe in, so we come in with a needle tool and just scratch in fur lines, and you can just push around that edge and that will get rid of that join line. See? Scratch it all in like that. But if you're doing smooth skin or something that hasn't got texture, just use your fingers and smooth it in. The other thing that helps very well with smoothing raw clay into baked clay, you can use a rubber tipped tool, or I find that a firm paintbrush actually can help smooth out those join lines really well. So just got to do that underside there. Ooh, get in here. This is always the complicated bit. Let's come in here. Oops, push back. Behave, I don't want you breaking off. Here we go. Right, almost done, and then I'll show you how this wrist, you won't even see that it's been broke. Right, okay, here we go. Joint back on, it's all looking like fur. See? It's slightly lighter than the rest of the hair, but that darkens up once it's baked, because it's the same ball of clay that I used to make the rest of the fur, so it should be fine. And that is on there firmly and should be grand. So now for these toes. Let's move the raw clay away that I've just been working on. Clean my sideboard down and we'll get on to this. So you can see the armature's just sticking out and it's done a clear sheer break all the way across, and that's what I'm aiming for, are actual feet. So we're back to that skin tone clay again, and I'm gonna measure out a bit that's just slightly bigger than what you want for the area that you're covering. So little bit more off. That looks about right. Okay, move the rest out of the way. So make sure your clay is nice and conditioned. Condition, it just means kneading the clay or rolling it out and bringing it back together. You're mixing in the plasticizers and warming it up so it's nice and soft. So that should do it fine, because you really don't want to use crumbly clay when you're trying to add it to baked clay. Now I know there's a lot of companies, well, a lot of companies, at least one company that does something called bake and bond for polymer clay. You're meant to put a very thin layer of it and it helps the bond between raw and baked clay. Other people have also said using liquid clay. Every time I've tried it, it just makes the joint surface really slidey, and I can't actually smooth it all in and get it to hold where I want. I actually find just making sure that you do a decent bond on the clays, you don't need the extra. So what you want to do is, it's about the same sort of size, but can you see it's overlapping the whole foot slightly, yeah? So it's a little bit extra. That's what you want. You want to make a little cap, and then you're going to push it on firm, make sure you've not trapped any air bubbles under that, and then I'm going to use my thumb and smooth in that line where I can, because on the top side I'm probably going to need to use a tool to do it. I find using your fingers to smooth in the lines actually makes them vanish far easier than any other tool I have actually tried it with. So that's smoothed in down the side, so we now just got to smooth in that top bit, and again I support underneath, and I'm just gonna use the side of my tool and just roll. A little rolling motion helps bring it up the side and bond it to that clay. Along here I'm going to use my ball tool and just rub it in like that. It's worth taking time at this stage to make sure that it's bonded all around the edges and smoothed in how you want it, because if it's harder to do once it's baked. If you find a crack once it's baked, you can just fill it in with clay, but we found it falls out. I find you need to widen the crack into a V shape like that and then fill it in. Just a single hairline crack, I found clay can fall out. I also find what I like the best for hairline cracks, especially in things like pots, I use No More Nails because it's stronger than polyfiller. Put a line in the crack, rub it down, and then before I've done that I shave a very thin sliver off the bottom of the pot and chop that down into fine dust so it's the same colour as what you're fixing, and then I sprinkle that on top of the crack once you polyfillered it and push that in so it'll colour match the area. Does that make sense? But I will do that on another video once I come across it. I've not had cracking in pots for a little bit, thankfully. Right, so that is bonded on nicely. So now we can actually start to sculpt those toes again. So again, make sure you're supporting it. You're coming in 5 toes, so one big one there, and you go. Sorry, here.
No, I mean the big toe should be at the.
Whoops. Thank you. Thankfully, hubby just saved me there. Big toe on this side. Big toe here. And you're going down the front and over. We're just going to tap out that little pointed bit and bring it so that it's a bit more rounded. There we go. Then we can come in and do 4 more little ones. Now I'm not happy with that shaping because these ones come forward and it rounds over to the side like that. Yep. that looks more like it. 4 more toes in there. So 1, 2, 3 lines for 4 toes, and then you bring it round and under. Because this foot is going to be actually standing on the plinth, I ain't bothering doing the underside, because there's no point putting the work in to sculpt all the underside if it's not even going to be sitting. But can you see I've got very squared toe tips at the moment? So I'm literally going to come in with a little flat surface and just tap on each side to round them over so they actually look like toes rather than weird webbed feet. There we go. You see, tapping them in just a little to make them nice round toes. Oops. There we are. Right, now they look a bit splayed, so I'm just going to push them together a bit like that. There we are. I get a bit of grit on it and it marks it. Right, so that looks more like it. I just want to shape it up a bit like that. Now I'm going to come in with my little tool, put some toenails on it, and that's just by putting a ball tool on it lightly and then dragging like that, and a few little tendon lines in, and they go between the toes up the top of the foot, and you don't want them very deep, like that. See? That one doesn't go all the way to the tip, so it'll make it look a bit odd, like that. There we go. So that's your feet all fixed. They're looking pretty much the same as each other. That one might be a bit wide, and if it is, you can just fiddle around the side like that. Your hands back in and solid. So I'm going to bake this, and this time, instead of doing that with it, I am going to probably put it on its back like that and bake it in the oven. You need about, I would say, for this sort of fix, 15-20 minutes, because it's not actually a thick bit of clay that you've got. But so 15-20 minutes in the oven and we're good again. Oh, that was it. There's that little crack up there, isn't there? Almost forgot that one. Sorry guys, almost ended it prematurely. So I'm just going to get some of the patterned clay and go under that armpit and push it on. Now, because it's in a crevice, I'm going to use that rolling motion again and push it right into that crack. And if you see, I'm not just filling the crack, I'm going quite a bit wider than the crack. Let's get that definition back in there of that muscle. So like that. And it doesn't need to be thick, but you want it to be quite wide, if that makes sense. Just moving in down here and bringing out that muscle definition, and then we can go in and scratch in the fur, but make sure that you're not going so deep that you're scratching away that whole top layer that you just put on. It still needs to be relatively thick for a fix. So if you're going to do a lot of very deep detail, you're going to need to make it thicker than I just did, if that makes sense. I'm just coming in, gently putting in those scratch marks for the fur. And it vanishes away nicely, doesn't it? The problem I find is trying to colour match if I haven't got any over of the pattern block that I was using. See, you couldn't tell there was an ad on there, but all that is raw clay. So yeah, we've got a good fix on all three places now, and we're good to carry on. So I'll see you guys on Wednesday when I'll show you how I make the other arm to go with this one. Okay, have a good couple of days. Bye.